Innocent until proven guilty?
Here's the thing about that.
For those of you who don't know me, I am Viva Frei, a Montreal litigator turned YouTuber. I have been making videos on YouTube for going on 4 years and 2 years almost daily. 1, 2, 3, huh! A few weeks ago, I did a video where I was reading the body language of Kevin Spacey after he released that Christmas Eve. After he released that video on Christmas Eve, Kevin Spacey posted a video on YouTube yesterday called Let Me Be Frank, in which he ostensibly addresses the allegations of sexual assault and sexual misconduct.
I know what you want.
And you know what, before I go on, like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because I have a feeling I have a lot of subscribers who have not hit the notification bell and don't get notified when I put up videos, so just go tap that button right there. I did a body language reading. It got a lot of traction and it got a lot of comments. For good or for bad, for right or for wrong, I read each and every single comment. And there were a number of comments in that video that I figured I should probably address as things would progress. Kevin Spacey was in court for his arraignment, and I figured it's an opportune time to do another body language analysis of his presence in the courtroom and get to some of these comments with my responses to those comments. So let's just get started. All right, so one of the comments was guilty until proven innocent, LOL. Another comment reads as follows. I don't know what Kevin Spacey did or did not do, but this bogus pseudoscientific analysis is the kind of crap false accusations are built on and people are condemned with. It's a pretty shameful contribution to the hysteria rippling through our culture right now. Here's the thing about innocent until proven guilty. You have guilty in the criminal law sense, which is beyond a reasonable doubt, and then you have guilty in a spiritual moral sense, which is not beyond a reasonable doubt. Someone can get acquitted of a crime because they did not meet the criminal threshold for guilt,
And I might still think they're guilty.
I have an opinion that does not abide by the criminal standard of culpability. And when I believe that Kevin Spacey may be guilty of some form of impropriety, it's not just based on the accusations of Anthony Rapp at the time, who said 30 years ago at a party, Kevin Spacey came onto him when he was 14 years old. It's based on Kevin Spacey's response to those accusations. And for anyone who wasn't following the story when it occurred, Kevin Spacey's response was what I, as a lawyer, perceived to be a response infused with admissions. And I'm going to read his response to refresh the memories of those who may have forgotten it and to bring it to the attention of those who may not know it exists. I have a lot of respect and admiration for Anthony Rapp as an actor. I'm beyond horrified to hear his story. I honestly do not remember the encounter. It would have been over 30 years ago, but if I did behave then as he describes, I owe him the sincerest apology for what would have been deeply inappropriate drunken behavior, and I am sorry for all the feelings he describes having carried with him all of these years. This story has encouraged me to address other things about my life. I know that there are stories out there about me, and that some have been fueled by the fact that I have been so protective of my privacy. As those closest to me know, in my life I have had relationships with both men and women. I have loved and had romantic encounters with men throughout my life, and I choose now to live as a gay man. I want to deal with this honestly and openly, and that starts with examining my own behavior. Kevin Spacey. I am a lawyer. I have had experience dealing with these types of statements, and you dissect them. And when you dissect them, I come to the conclusion that there is an admission of guilt in this, and I'll break it down for you to illustrate why. I honestly do not remember the encounter. It would have been over 30 years ago. When I hear people using the conditional "it would have been," I get suspicious, and I have addressed this in previous law vlogs. When someone tries to dissociate themselves from what did happen, they use terms like would have, could have, and then it goes on. But if I did behave then as he describes, I owe him the sincerest apologies for what would have been deeply inappropriate drunken behavior. We go back to the what would have been. I'm not going after criminal condemnation. I am not going after social retribution or mob justice. I am simply coming to my own conclusions, not based on the allegations, but based on the response to those allegations. You have yet again more dissociative terminology in an attempt to separate the individual from the act. It's also the sort of statement or justification you get from politicians. It's always the, I didn't do it, but if I did do it, I'm sorry. That is where I come to determine culpability from my own perspective of judgment. But let's keep going. Bringing in his sexual orientation to somehow address or negate or contradict allegations of sexual impropriety is a big red flag. It's an attempt to shield the accused from further criticism by bringing out personal issues that are unrelated to the accusation, but make it so that if you continue to accuse the accused, it's somehow as a result of the information that he's just elected, the private information, his sexual orientation now. And it's a tactic that witnesses use all the time, and they don't appreciate the degree to which it reduces their credibility. I was in a trial where one of the witnesses, for no better reason, spontaneously, in an attempt to prove that they weren't lying, said that they had kids and that they have a wife and a family. As though people with a wife and family and kids don't lie or don't do bad things. And it was by virtue of bringing up something that was totally irrelevant to the testimony testimony, that in and of itself undermined the credibility of the witness. Incidentally, it's the exact same thing that Serena Williams did in her tennis match, where spontaneously after having been accused of receiving coaching from her coach, she brings up the fact that she has a kid and that she does right by her kid.
I have a daughter and I stand what's right for her and I've never cheated.
When someone tries to moralize themselves faced with an accusation, it's typically because they are trying to bury the accusation in a moral cloud where you can no longer pursue the accusation without a moral attack on the person. So when I have come to the conclusion that Kevin Spacey is guilty of something, I don't know what and to what extent, it is not in the criminal sense that I have decided he is guilty. And to some extent, it's actually independent of criminal condemnation. It's not because O.J. Simpson was acquitted that I believe he's innocent, and I don't care if Harvey Weinstein does get acquitted. I still know what I believe, and there's a reason why the criminal threshold is as high as it is that you want to avoid wrongful condemnations in the criminal sense. But as far as it goes on an individual, personal, spiritual level, in order for me to believe something, I don't need to believe it beyond a reasonable doubt. I just need to be relatively convinced that I know what I believe and I know why I believe it and that I have legitimate basis for believing it. I got a lot of flack in the comment section for not noticing the mug that Kevin Spacey was drinking out of. And in fairness to me, the internet, when I posted my video, did not know what that mug said. It was only the people on 4chan a couple of days later that, through some mad forensic analysis and rendering of images, determined that the mug that he was drinking out of had some sort of reference to the royal family. And a lot of people concluded that him drinking out of that mug was sort of a veiled threat or a reference to the royal family, that if he goes down, he's going to be taking down people of the royal family. That is a theory that I'm not going into because it can neither be proven nor disproven. But now let's come back to the present day, because it was last week Kevin Spacey was arraigned on charges of indecent assault and battery. Now, on the substance of this accusation, it's very interesting, and I am not taking a position one way or the other because this is much more of a nuanced accusation, and there's not as much evidence, as far as I am concerned, from the immediate response of Kevin Spacey. And for those of you who don't know, the charges against Kevin Spacey stem from an incident that occurred in 2016 in Nantucket, where he allegedly grabbed the genitals of an 18-year-old individual after buying that person alcohol at a bar where the legal drinking age is 21, and the individual told his mother, and his mother ultimately filed a complaint. This is a much trickier situation from a criminal perspective. We're dealing with an 18-year-old individual. Kevin Spacey's defense apparently is that it was all consensual, that he didn't know the kid was 18, that the kid lied about his age. There are too many things in here to make a determination either from a criminal or even from a moral perspective, but that's where we're at. So Kevin Spacey was in court being arraigned last week, and his body language is interesting. And before we get into it, let's also preface this by saying that body language interpretation is highly personal, and a lot of body language analysis, and any form of analysis for that matter, is susceptible to what is known as confirmation bias, meaning you're going to interpret what you see in a manner to fit what you already believe. That said, being aware of confirmation bias is a pretty decent way to sort of address it or factor it into your analysis, but we're going to look at his body language anyhow, so let's get to it. Alright, so right away what I'm noticing is that he looks meek, he looks weak, and he looks docile, and it's not by accident. This is a deliberate effort to come off this way, as non-aggressive as possible, as docile as possible, but he is doing his absolute best to maintain his composure and not give off any hint of resentment, hostility, or anger. A very smooth, relaxed face. His eyes are giving away a certain element of nervousness. They're darting back and forth at a more rapid rate than the rest of his body is moving. And it's very hard to control your eyes when you're nervous. You tend to shift away, look up, down, left, right, and you get distracted by visual stimuli in the surrounding environment when you're nervous and on edge, even though you're training your body to sort of put it all away. And he's sitting there with his mouth closed. And the thing is, when you're nervous, it's not easy to breathe through your nose for extended periods of time. It's sort of like trying to jog with your mouth closed. You're nervous. Your body wants to force you to take deep breaths, which you can't really get when you exclusively breathe through your nose.
I know there was a motion filed by defense. I had occasion to look at it. Mr. DA, have you had occasion to look at it? You want to be heard on the motion, or
As it relates to the motion to preserve itself, we're suggesting at this point that the scope that is being requested by counsel is overly broad.
This is actually the most interesting part of the video. Let's get to this.
It's asking for July 7th and July 8th of 2016, but all the way up to the present. We suggest that based on what's been filed, up to the present is overly broad.
it's a fair point. Mr. Jackson or Ms. Bolero, I don't know who's going to respond, but feel free.
Your Honor, I don't believe at this point that we need to talk about the scope. That's something in terms of a subpoena. All I'm asking at this point is that we preserve it.
I'm inclined to allow the motion. I don't know that I'm going to do it all the way up until, from the 7th and 8th up. I mean, I may give you maybe 6 months worth of preservation, but I don't know that I'm going to require that everything be preserved.
Okay, so let me summarize this in as non-legalese as possible. Kevin Spacey's attorney seems to have made a request to the court to order the prosecution or the accuser not to destroy, delete, or tamper with any documents, emails, text messages. It's called a motion to preserve, meaning preserve potential evidence, do not destroy it so that it can be discovered at a later date, meaning we can ask questions on it and ask for communication of those documents, texts, emails. The prosecution is objecting to some extent to the request to not destroy documents on the basis that it's overly broad. It goes to the present date and not just up into the time of the accusations or the incident. I'd love to know who you think between the lawyers did a better job presenting their respective positions. Maybe put the comment in now because I'm going to tell you what I think right now. Imagine that there is a text message between the accuser and his mother saying, "We are going to sue Kevin Spacey for all he's worth." Ooh, let's just say 3 days before they filed the complaint. Might that be relevant to the charges brought against Kevin Spacey? I think the answer is relatively obvious. And Spacey's lawyer is not asking to be provided those text messages, emails, documentation right now on the spot. He's simply asking for an order from the court saying, "You can't destroy it, accuser. Do not delete your text messages. Do not delete your emails up until the present date." To me, it seems like not just reasonable request, it seems like a no-brainer. If I'm Kevin Spacey's lawyer, I want to see any and all correspondence between the accuser, his mother, his family, his friends, his girlfriend, not just around the incident, but afterwards. Something that might account for why the accusation was made when it was made. Something that might shed some light on the circumstances around the decision to file the complaint. What the judge ultimately seems to have concluded is that there will be a 6-month buffer, call it 6 months from the date of the alleged incident, that the order to preserve will apply to. So that is it. That is another body language reading, analysis, follow-up, clarification on Kevin Spacey, the original Let Me Be Frank video, his arraignment last week, and where we're going with this. I'll keep up to date on this. It's interesting from a legal perspective. As always, these situations are very difficult because there are humans behind them, both the accuser and the accused, which makes criminal law excessively spiritually difficult, which is why I didn't do it. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Peace out and peace out.